亲爱的毛主席，我们心中的红太阳。亲爱的毛主席，我们心中的红太阳。千万人红心的剧烈的跳动，千万人笑脸向着红太阳。我们总会祝福你老人家，万寿江，万寿江，万寿江。
So after a semester of learning about the history of China, I think it's time to think about what is the most interesting thing we've learnt this year. And after 5,000 years, 5 ways, it's kind of hard to pinpoint just one trend, one pattern that we want to say is interesting, just because there's so many to choose from. But for me, I think it comes back to why I wanted to take the class. For me, I chose to take history of China because I wanted to learn more about my roots, because as a Chinese person, I think I need to understand my history. That's why US citizens have to take AP US history, or US history at least. And I just thought it was sad that for the first 15 years of my life, I hadn't learned anything about Chinese history. And my parents thought this was really sad too. And so I wanted to learn more about my roots. But then what I found, with this in mind, going into the class, what I found most interesting is how the values of East and West differ, and how that affects China today, and how that looks for China in the future. For example, China is well known for being a country that works hard. For example, if you go back to the origin story, whilst the West is a culture that, because of the story of Adam and Eve, thinks of themselves as superior because they've been given the God-given right to rule over every other living creature on the planet. It gives them this sense that they are superior, and not necessarily arrogant. It's just a confidence that they will succeed in life because they have the power of God with them, and they have this gift of God. Whereas in Chinese society, it's all about hard work. You don't have any predetermined advantage. Every man is born for himself, and they have to work for themselves to get to where they want. And this is a value that you see throughout Chinese history. You go to the Shujing, and this is definitely seen in the qualities that they desire. In the Yao, Shen, and Yu, they both emphasize that hard work is a quality that you need. And when Kangxi was choosing his heir for his successor, he looked at who worked hard and wasn't just simply power hungry. And I think this sense of hard work is something that you definitely still see today. I mean, my parents, day in, day out, they're telling me that hard work is what's most important, and it doesn't really matter how well you do, it's whether you're working hard to achieve the best that you can. And I think that's something, it's a really good value to have, because rather than emphasize on whether you can succeed or not, it's more about whether you've done everything you can, so that even when you fail, you feel accomplished because you've done everything you can. And it's just, when I look at the future, I just hope that China can continue, that this value continues to be a part of Chinese culture. But going back to what I was saying, I feel like the values of China have always played such a major role. For example, China has always valued filial piety, wisdom, and attention to subjects such as language, art, calligraphy, culture, poetry expression, and most importantly, I guess, preservation of culture. Whereas with the West, they're a lot more about power, success, and economic advancement. And I think that these contrasting values have really affected Chinese history. For example, if you look towards the period of exploration. During Zheng He's voyages, whilst Zheng He was a lot more about portraying his own country as great, but not necessarily demeaning the countries he was visiting. He was interested in learning about other cultures and about understanding new things, and he was open to learning about new cultures, and wherever possible, he tried to avoid using brute power or mass weaponry to harm the countries they were exploring. Whereas you look at Western culture that has this belief since the story of Adam and Eve that they're superior, they go into their they go into the countries they explore, and immediately they think of themselves as superior. And I think China too would think that, but at the same time, China is open to knowing about the other country, whereas the West was a lot more, we're the best, you are under us, and we're here to help you because we can teach you so much because we're amazing and you're not. And I think that really hindered. I think although this imperialistic view, I guess somewhat worked for the West, I think at the end of the day, you look back at history and you just think, why would a culture be so unwilling to learn about another country? And I think this type of ignorance for the West is still present today, in that a lot of people in the West, in America for example, they still don't want to learn anything else. They don't want to know more about other cultures. A lot of people that come to Singapore from the States, for example, they don't know anything about Singapore. They think it's part of China. They've never been outside the state, and it's not really it's not their fault. It's that there's this ignorance of other societies within America. Whereas if you go to China, China's all about learning about new cultures. China's always been about learning new things, being open to new values, being open to, well, not necessarily open to new values, but open to learning more, and open to developing their understanding. And I think this bodes well for China as a society, because one of the most important things is that to be, I guess, a leader in the world, you have to know what else, you have to understand what other countries are doing. And I think just going back to the missionary trips that the West and the Chinese both went to, such as in India, the way that the West interacted with them versus the way the Chinese acted with them, I think it goes to show how in the future China can be a good world leader just based off of history. And I think what else struck me is that China's values have persisted so long, and for the longest period of time, for this period of history, the Western Chinese have had such different goals, and at least up until before Wave 5, China was all about developing its culture, and its the values were largely based on wisdom, culture. And you look at Wave 3 in the Tang Dynasty, and there's just an explosion of culture, of poetry, and these poems, I think it's interesting to note that these poems, these songs, the art of calligraphy, Tang art, it's still on Chinese TV all the time. You turn on the TV and you will see the tongue dancing with the long sleeves, and you see it, and it's just that preservation is. I think the preservation of culture is essential, and it's just that in recent years, with the current state of the economy, what we've seen is that China is starting to. It's right now China is moving into the stage where it will possibly become a world leader, and the Chinese values. As China becomes a world value, it's just interesting to note whether or not they will continue to, whether China will continue to place emphasis on the values, or whether they will become as as whether they will become modernized, and whether they will, or not modernized, westernized, because I think that what identifies China as someone that will become a worldly leader is its values in hard work, filial piety, and knowledge and understanding of the world around them. I think that is something that puts them in top shape, and I think that the Western capitalistic values of economic success is something that's beginning to affect China, and not that China is becoming capitalistic, just that China is starting to advance its economic developments, and I wouldn't want to see China's values being corrupted by Western media. And so, I guess to conclude, I just feel like Chinese history and Chinese values of hard work, filial piety, are things that they define me as a person. My work ethic, my relationship with my family, the Confucius 5 relationships, that even and the idea that the Taoist belief that that everything, that the yin yang, the Taoist belief that with yin yang things happen in a cycle, and that everything happens everything is constantly changing, and everything happens for a reason, and the idea that don't automatically jump to, oh no, something bad happened, or oh no, something good happened, is something that I think most Chinese people have. It's not like Chinese go. I mean, I hope I'm not making this really confusing, but before I learned about Confucianism, Taoism, etc., I never knew that so much of my values were Confucianist, Taoist, yet they were. As I said before, my relationship with my family, it hasn't just suddenly changed because I've learned about Confucianism. It's just something that's a part of me, and I think that that is what's most interesting about the history of China, how despite Western Christian because Westerners, they have values in their Christian lives, but somehow with the growth of capitalism, I feel like their values have decayed significantly. I think what's most interesting for me about the history of China, and something that makes me proud, is that Chinese values have been able to persist throughout history, and Chinese values will hopefully continue to last and will prove to be the factor in determining success for China in the future.